Ever wish you could just like download knowledge, straight into your brain?
It'd be a human thumb drive.
Exactly, especially when you're trying to learn something new, something complicated. Well, today's deep dive, it takes us right to the edge of that dream. We're talking about how to make AI even better at answering your toughest questions.
The real brain teasers.
The ones that make your brain hurt just thinking about them.
And we're dissecting a really interesting research paper to do it.
Lay it on us.
It's called Inference Scaling for Long Context Retrieval Augmented Generation.
Yeah, gee.
I know, it's a mouthful. But stick with us, because this stuff, it has some seriously cool implications for how we learn.
Okay, so we've all messed around with those AI chatbots, right?
Right.
And they're pretty impressive, like scarily good at sounding like a human who's read a lot of Wikipedia.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing, just giving these AI models more data, it doesn't automatically make them smarter.
No, it really doesn't. It's like, when you're trying to find a single quote.
Oh, I know, for a research paper, and you're just like...
Yeah, like for a research paper, and someone hands you the entire Library of Congress.
The worst.
Talk about overwhelming, right?
Yeah.
And this paper dives into that exact problem. How can we make AI better at pinpointing the most important information, especially for those real head-scratcher questions?
So instead of just making AI bigger,
yes,
they're trying to make it smarter, because we don't just want information, we want understanding.
Exactly. And that's where this research, it gets really interesting. It's not just about how MCH information you throw at the AI. It's about teaching it to use what it's got more effectively.
So how do you do that? Did they, slip the AI a detective novel and hope for the best?
Not quite. But it does involve some pretty clever techniques. One of them is called DRAG.
DRAG.
Yeah.
I like it.
Demonstration-based retrieval augmented generation.
Okay.
Yeah.
DRAG. I like it. Sounds powerful. So what makes DRAG so special? Give me the rundown.
Okay, so imagine this. Instead of just giving the AI like a mountain of documents,
yeah,
we give it some solved cases too.
Okay.
It's like saying, here's a question, here's the answer, and here are the specific documents that were used to find that answer.
So they're learning by example.
Yeah.
Kind of like an apprentice watching a master at work and picking up their tricks. Like, okay, so when I see this kind of question, I need to look for this kind of clue in that kind of document.
Exactly. And what's amazing is that just by giving the AI these examples, it gets so much better at answering questions correctly, like way better than if we just, let it loose on a pile of data with no guidance.
Okay, DRAG is cool. But I have a hunch it gets even better. What about this whole iterative thing I keep hearing about? Like, are they telling the AI to keep trying until it gets it right?
It's even cooler than that. Remember how we were talking about those really complex questions?
Yeah.
The ones that involve connecting multiple pieces of information?
Yeah. Like a multi-step logic puzzle where it's like one answer leads to another question and so on until you finally crack the code.
That's the one. Well, this iterative approach, which they call IterDRAG.
Okay.
It basically trains the AI to break down those super complex questions into smaller, more manageable chunks.
So instead of trying to eat the entire elephant in one bite, it's more like taking smaller, more strategic bites.
Precisely. And with each bite, it gets closer and closer to the final answer. What's fascinating is that this approach, it's especially effective for those multi-step questions, the ones that often trip up AI. It's like giving them a roadmap to navigate complex information, which, by the way, that's something you can use in your own life when you're tackling, tough research projects.
Now that's a takeaway I can use. This is already blowing my mind, and we're just getting started. But before we go any further, we've got to talk about the scaling part of this whole equation, because let's be honest, sometimes more information just makes things more confusing, right?
Oh, tell me about it.
Like cramming for a test at the last minute, it's not always helpful.
Not at all. You're absolutely right. It's not just about the quantity of information.
Yeah.
It's about using it effectively. And that's where this concept of effective context length comes in.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Break it down for me. What is effective context length and why should I care?
Think of it like this. Instead of measuring, how many pages are in a book, it's about understanding how much of the book you actually need to read to grasp those key ideas.
So instead of just looking at how much data the AI is processing, they're looking at how much of that data is actually being used to answer the question.
Exactly. And what they found is that there's a direct link between this effective context length, so how much relevant information the AI is actually using, and how accurate its answers are.
Wait, hold on. Are they saying that we can actually predict how much smarter the AI will get if we give it a certain amount of extra information? Because that's kind of mind-blowing if you think about it.
It is mind-blowing, and it has huge implications for how we design and train these AI systems. But as with most things in life, it's not quite as simple as a one-size-fits-all solution. Different tasks, different types of questions, they all have their own sweet spot when it comes to this effective context length.
Like you wouldn't hand a world-renowned chef a box of instant ramen
Right.
and expect a Michelin star meal.
Exactly.
You've got to match the complexity of the task
Yeah.
with the right tools and resources.
You got it. And that's where the next layer of this research comes in, a concept they call the computation allocation model.
Okay.
I know, it sounds a little intimidating.
Yeah.
But bear with me.
Okay. You've piqued my curiosity.
Yeah.
Lay it on me. What is this computation allocation model and why should I be excited about it? You've piqued my curiosity. Lay it on me. What is this computation allocation model and why should I be excited about it?
Okay, so remember how we were just talking about how different tasks need different amounts of information to really get the best results, Right.
Right.
This model, it's like having a master chef, right?
Okay.
Who can tell you exactly how much of each ingredient you need to create, like the perfect dish.
So no more guesswork. Sign me up.
Exactly. No more throwing extra information at the AI and hoping to the best. This model, it helps us find that sweet spot, that optimal balance, between giving the AI enough information to do its job.
Right.
Without overwhelming it with irrelevant stuff.
So it's all about efficiency.
Yeah.
Getting the most bang for your buck, computationally speaking.
Exactly. And here's the really cool part. This model, it isn't just limited to like one specific task or data set.
Okay.
Once you've trained it on a variety of different scenarios, you can then use it to predict the optimal configuration for new tasks.
Wow.
Stuff it's never even seen before.
So it's like giving the AI the ability to learn how to learn.
Yes.
To adapt its approach based on the specific challenge at hand.
You got it. It's a huge step towards developing AI systems that are like more flexible, more adaptable, and ultimately more intelligent.
This is all incredibly exciting. But it's important to remember that even with all these advancements, AI still has its limitations. What are some of the challenges that the researchers highlighted in the paper?
Well, one of the biggest hurdles is still the quality of information that we're feeding these AI systems.
Yeah.
Even with all the fancy algorithms, all the optimization models, the AI, it's only as good as the data it has to work with.
It's like giving a master detective a case file full of false leads and red herrings, right?
Yeah.
No matter how brilliant they are, they're going to have a tough time cracking the case.
Precisely. And that's why this research, it emphasizes the importance of not just scaling the amount of information we feed to AI, but also the quality of that information.
Yeah.
We need to get much better at ensuring that the data we're using, it's accurate, it's relevant, it's up to date.
So garbage in, garbage out. Even with a super sophisticated AI model.
Yep.
Makes sense. Were there any other limitations they discussed?
Another big one is multi-step reasoning.
Okay.
While AI has become incredibly good at understanding and generating human-like text, it can still struggle with like more complex logical tasks. The ones that require connecting multiple pieces of information, especially when those connections aren't obvious.
It's like that game where you have to guess the rule based on a series of examples.
Right.
Even when you have a ton of data points, sometimes that underlying rule, it just remains elusive.
Exactly. And this highlights an area where further research is desperately needed. Like, how can we train AI to not just find and process information, but to actually reason about it in a more human-like way?
To see the connections that aren't always apparent, to make those intuitive leaps that often lead to real breakthroughs?
Exactly. It's about bridging the gap between data and understanding, between information and insight. And frankly, it's a challenge that we humans, we still grapple with too.
Which brings us back to that thought-provoking question you raised earlier. If simply giving AI more context can make it this much smarter, what does that say about how we learn best? Does having access to more information always make us better thinkers? Or do we, like these AI systems, need to develop strategies for focusing on the right information at the right time?
It's a question.
Right.
We all struggle with.
Yeah.
This research, it really highlights that it's not about the sheer volume of information we can access.
Right.
It's about our ability to filter, to process, to connect the dots, Just like those AI models, we need the right strategies to make sense of complex information.
So it's not about becoming walking encyclopedias,
No.
but rather like master sleuths, right?
Exactly.
Able to sift through the noise and find those crucial pieces of information that lead to true understanding.
Absolutely. It's about being able to not just find the right information,
Yeah.
but to understand why it matters, how it connects to the bigger picture, and what new insights, what new things can we learn from it.
This has been a fascinating deep dive. For those of us who aren't, AI researchers but want to become more effective learners, what's the key takeaway from this research? What can we learn from how AI is being taught to learn? What's the key takeaway from this research? What can we learn from how AI is being taught to learn?
Well, for those of us who aren't AI researchers, but, we still want to be more effective learners,
Right.
I think one of the most important takeaways is like the importance of strategy in learning.
Okay.
Just like those enhanced AI models, they benefit from having a clear approach to tackling complex questions.
Right.
We can benefit from that too, approaching our own learning with intention. Don't be afraid to break down those big, daunting questions into smaller, more manageable chunks,
So instead of getting overwhelmed by the sheer scale of a new subject,
Right.
we can create a sort of roadmap to guide our learning.
Exactly. And remember those examples we talked about earlier? Don't be afraid to seek out different perspectives. Look at how other people, how they've approached similar problems.
Right.
Find those solved cases that can give you a starting point.
Yeah, it's about being proactive.
Yes.
Engaged learners, not just passive consumers of information.
Absolutely. The more we understand about how AI learns, the more we discover about our own learning processes.
Totally.
It's like this fascinating feedback loop that has the potential to unlock new levels of understanding, both for ourselves and for the future of intelligent machines.
It makes you wonder what incredible breakthroughs are waiting to be uncovered as we continue to blur the lines between human and artificial intelligence. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the cutting edge of AI and the future of learning. Until next time, stay curious.